Alright, I got some parts in for the transmission. I got that tool to pull the piston and springs off that. And here's the rebuild kit I got. This is the forward clutch hub. This is a stronger one. I'll be putting that in there. Seals and gaskets. There's the clutches and the steels. I don't know what that is, but we won't be using that. That's the modulator. We won't be using that. And then I got a thicker snap ring, and I got a case saver. And then I got the pan, which is the high flow pan. It doesn't have that messy filter down inside there. So that's good. And then I got this little piece for the, to put the Torrington bearing in the rear of the case. And here's some parts that I ordered for the transmission build. This is the direct aluminum piston here. This is the direct drum that will hold the 34 element sprag. So the back of the direct drum has to be smooth, whereas the stock ones, they're notched for the 6, 8 or whatever element sprag that yours comes with. And then I bought a spiral lock off of eBay for the sprag, the direct drum sprag, to hold the gear on there. And this is the rebuild kit, the case saver, and the rollerized bearing, and the Ford hub, the aftermarket Ford hub, Ford clutch hub. And this is the fixed snap ring I bought. I got the 106 thousandths. And then the spring compressor tool, I just got that off Walmart, but many sites sell that same one. Alright, so I'm rebuilding my Turbo 400 transmission. So the first thing I did was I took out the rear case bushing. And I just used a screwdriver and a hammer to pop that out, being real careful not to score up the sides down inside there. And then I got my rollerized bearing, and here's the part number for the rollerized bearing I used. The bearing comes with a step. You have to put it through this side. The stock bearing, I don't guess it matters which way you put it through, but this one, it's got a big lip on it that bearing and the shim set over top of. So you drive that down through this way, and what I used was just an end of a 2x4. I had a big 2x4 I put down in there, and I hammered it down in there. And then what you do is you measure this is what usually goes in there, these little tangs. This tang would go down in the case in them 3 prongs. See? And those 3 prongs go in there. And then this piece would go up on here and go in those holes. Can't get it back off now. So what you do is you take those 2 and you measure them. And then with the new bearing, the new roller bearing, this thing comes with bushings too. Little thin washers. You try to get as close as you can to the thickness of the ones that came out of it. And with the roller bearing, it's better to be a little bit thicker. So if you have the choice to go a little bit thicker versus thinner, you want to go thicker on the rollerized bearing. But now, once you get all that in there, and we'll do that here in a minute, but once you get it all in there, you can measure your end play down here in this hole between the bearing and the gear set. But I've already put some of this stuff in here, but
I'll cover that later in the video of how I put that stuff in. This one's getting a trans brake, so a lot of stuff's not going to be used, and there's going to be a lot of different stuff. But now then there's the reverse band, and the reverse band, it goes on those 2 pins right there, which now you want to have, see that shaft coming through? That's part of this. You want to make sure you have that out when you put that reverse band in there, or you're going to have a hard time getting it in. But there's 2 prongs that goes on up here that are fixed in the transmission. You just put it on and make sure the lips and the band fit over those 2 prongs. They're these prongs right here that go through the transmission. But you drop that in. And I've already had this part way together, and then I took it back apart. So I already know that my rear end play's good. The rear end play is supposed to be 7 thousandths to 19 thousandths, and I'm at 14 thousandths. You want to be on the tighter side with the roller bearings, but I just have the bearing in there, and all I've got's a 10 thousandth shim. If I put that in there, I'm going to be 4 thousandths or tighter, so I'm going to leave it at 14 thousandths. So the next part we're going to do is we're going to put the gear set back together. Now on this gear set, there's a bunch of set of these roller bearings, and some of them got a lip on them right there. You want to make sure that the lip goes down in the holes. You definitely don't want those lips riding on a flat surface, because that's going to be problems. See, that's the flat surface that's going to go on. So that's the flat surface that's going to go down in there. So we want to make sure that we got the lip of that bearing down in a hole. There's the lip, and it goes down in the hole. And then this, I simply go right there, like that. And then we have another bearing right here. Now this bearing is where the sun gear is going. The bottom of the sun gear is going to ride on this bearing. So this one does have a lip on it, down in there, but that lip is just for the bearing, to hold the bearing in there. So we're dealing with 2 flat sides here, and this is a bearing that runs 2 flat sides. Just make sure your bearing's all the way down in there. So the sun gear is actually, I guess that's what this is called, is going to ride right there, like that. Plus the shaft, there's a shaft that goes down in there as well, but we'll get to that in a minute. But we'll go ahead and put that on there. Then we have this big old piece that's going to go down in there. This piece is going to go on this way. So we just set it up here like this, and it goes on there just like that. So since this piece right here has splines that have to go down inside this, those gears, it's easier to put that in first, because if you try to put this on with it, then it starts meshing in these gears and you can't turn that. So I went ahead and just dropped this down in there first. So just drop it right down in there. Make sure you got your bearing in the right way, because you can't put the bearing in for those gears once you get this in. So make sure your bearing's in the right way. Make sure that drops all down. That's good. And then again, make sure your bearing's the right way on this one. Actually, I'm going to take this off. Set it over there like that. And we can set that together like that. There we go. Now there's a snap ring that holds this part together. Now when you take these apart too, Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Let me put the snap ring in. Alright, once you get your snap ring in, make sure it's all the way in and good. I kind of scarred it up right there with the screwdriver, but we got the rear case bearing that's going to be running in here, so that'll be fine. Alright, so we'll go ahead and flip this over. Now, the reason for taking these apart, you know, check your bearings, check your gears in here, make sure, you know, they're all good and in place and tight. Now, the next part is this part right here, and this one does have a plastic bushing. And it also has a case silencer, which I had a hard time getting that out a while ago, but this bushing is going to go in these, it's got these 4 tangs. So those are going to go down in these, there's holes in between. See, there's a hole. There's a hole. So those tangs got like a half moon to them. See? And you just put those down in the hole. There we go. And then we got our bearing down in there. All that's good. And then there's a couple different things. We can put the gear down inside here, or we can slide that other piece on, but I'm gonna put the silencer on here real quick, if I can get it out of here. It stayed up in here. Also, you know, you want to check your bushings, make sure your bushings are good. If they're not, now's the time to replace those. All right, so I got the silencer off. There's a little lip that fits on right there. See? That just fits on there just like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put these gears down in here. I'll set this over here for now. Now, this gear has a hole in it. So does the bottom of this one. You want to line those up. Oh, I'm off a tooth. There we go. They're lined up now. Also, another thing. This gear, there's a beveled side. I don't know if you can tell there or not. Mine's barely beveled. There's a beveled side and a flat side. The flat side goes up. Let me just go ahead and drop that down in there. Mesh it with the gears. There we go. Now, there's a bearing on this one too. It goes on the top of those gears. I'm going to go ahead and put that part down there. It looks like the other part stuck to my center support, and it did. So again, here, this washer, this bearing has the ledge on it. So ledge side up. You want to make sure the flat side of the bearing is on a flat surface, and then the lip part goes up, which the lip part's going to sit right here on your center support. So we're just going to go ahead and leave that there. And I'll make sure I put some assembly lube on that. If you put assembly lube on these thrust washers, whether they be bronze, the plastic ones, or the roller bearings, it'll help hold that to that. But next thing we'll do is we'll slide this on, and then we got the plastic thrust bearing. It's in its holes, and then we just set that down on there, and then it goes over the silencing ring, and then we mesh it down in place. Be careful Yeah, it looks like our bearing's going to get in the way. So we're going to need to take the bearing out first before we do that. So the bearing goes in last. Make sure you grab the bearing and the race. Yeah, that's keeping it from missing. So definitely. But see, like on this part, it's even got a lip side. But that lip side, again, goes up and it just holds the rollerized part of the bearing. Alright, now, so good to know there. Can't have the bearing in first. Alright, so we'll put that on. And then it's got to go over the silencer. I believe that's what that's called. So we'll just, might need 2 hands for this. Yep, I'm going to go ahead and push that on. There we go, and it's on. It went over the silencer. Everything's good, and then we'll put our bearing back in there. Now our bearing goes down in there good. The top side of that bearing that has the lip that goes in the hole, we're just going to leave that on there because that's what's going to go in next. Also, there's another thrust washer that goes here, but it stayed up inside there, and we're just going to leave it up in there. So make sure that you got your thrust washer up in there on your center support. Now we can go ahead and drop this down in here. Now you can go ahead and put the center support in there and drop it all down together if you wanted to, but that just makes it heavier. I found it best just to put this in first. And now when you put it in, you can't hold on to this or you'll pull this completely out. So you want to hold on to this. I found that if your hands are, you don't have much meat here to hold on to, and that's kind of heavy. But I found and some people use them vice grips, which I would think that would hurt the splines and flat vice grips, but I guess they make a tool for it. But I found if I put my gloves on and my hands, if I put some gloves on, I'll put a glove on like this, and I can hold it, put it down in there. You know, I've put this in thing like 4 times. For some reason, my hands are just weaker today. I can't put it down in there. I keep grabbing a hold of that piece and pulling it out. And when you pull that piece out, these holes gotta line up. See? The holes lined up. So I don't see why you can't stick it down there like that. I'm gonna stick it down there like that and then try to stick that in there.
So I did stick it down in there just like that, and it was a lot easier because you got more to grab hold of, and you don't have to worry about accidentally grabbing that other shaft and pulling it out. Something that made this a lot easier too, I think I touched on the video, is I'd already had that one piece in the transmission, which was pushing the reverse band from the other side, that other pin I was showing you, and that made the reverse band a little tighter, which made it a little bit harder to stick this down in there. So it's better not to have that in there when you're trying to put the gear set in. And then when I drop the gear, or the shaft and gear that goes over top of that other gear and that sun gear at the bottom where you line up the holes, I just put a bunch of assembly goo on that, so it stuck together, and I stuck it down in there, and it went right down in there, and you just had to spin it a little bit to mesh with the 2 sets of gears, but it went right down in there, and that made it a lot easier than just trying to hold the very end of that one shaft.
We dropped it down in there. Again, make sure your bearing's down in there. Make sure it's all down in there. Made it a little bit harder to put that in there because I've got that in there pushing on that band, but it looks like it's in there. The next piece to go in is the center support. Now, these compress really easy. You can compress those down take the snap ring out. There's a snap ring. And this one only had, I think it was 3 springs. And then there's like a little Teflon piece down in there. And this one's got those seals in it too. This one, their center support, it's got a piston with seals inside there. Your center support, your direct drum and your forward drum, you take those apart and you replace these lip seals in them. Now, if you're running a trans brake, you gotta take this one out. There's 4 of these little seals. 4. And you take this second one down out. Take it all the way out and leave it out for a trans brake. Now when you do these seals, on the shaft here, coming up, the lip seal, the lip part goes, see this part goes in a groove, and then you got the seal part and it goes, on the center one it goes up. On these outer ones on the piston itself, there's an inside one and an outside one, the lip goes down. And I'll show you that in another video here. But we're going to go ahead and put this in and make sure that you line that up with your case screw. So we're going to go ahead and drop that in. And it's simple to drop that one in. Just make sure you're at the 6 o'clock position on your screw. Drop it down in there. And now it might not go all the way down at first, but you just twist a little and it should drop down. Just again, make sure on this that you got your bearing and your plastic bushing in there. I've got the bearing in there. The top of the bearing anyway, and the bottom of it's down there. But go ahead and drop that in there. Again, most of the time it won't go all the way in. You gotta kind of turn it and mess with it. Turn it and push down, and eventually it'll fall in. But we forgot something. Something I forgot. This one has a fretter ring. It's a real small ring. Now, if you have the thick center support, this fretter ring goes on the very bottom shelf. I mean, way down in there. If you got the thinner one like I do, it goes on that very top groove, that very top ledge. So let's go ahead and put that fretter ring in first. Alright, we got the fretter ring in right there. And that just acts as a support, really, or a shim actually, if anything. Now let's put this in here. This is the first time me building one of these transmissions, so. Learning as I go here. Now I'm going to see if I can't get that to drop down in there. It's not lining up with the hole yet.
So this is the piece I was talking about earlier that you should take out before you even put that gear set down in there, or before you even put the center support down on top of that, because it pushes that band, that reverse band, tighter, and it makes it harder to put stuff down in there. So I had the transmission together and I wanted to check something, so I took it back apart, and I was going to try to do it with that still in there, but I wound up having to take it back out.
I was having a hard time getting it to go down in there, so I took that out and it dropped right down in there. Alright, we're going to put the bolt in. Alright, next is this snap ring that's got the beveled edge on it. The beveled edge goes up and it goes right on top of your center support. So we'll go ahead and put those in. Now the openings are supposed to be over here, but I put them in that little hole over there because I think there's just more support that way. Alright, Once you got that snap ring in, make sure it's all the way seated, all the way around. And then we can put our intermediate clutches in. Also, another thing, if you want to, well, we'll do that in a minute. We're going to test the clutches. I'm going to show you how to do that. But now, once you got all that together, you can go ahead and check your end play right there at the bearing. I've already checked mine. 14 thousandths. Alright, here's I laid the transmission down. Here's checking it. I'm pushing on it with my knee. And then just right up in there. See, it's a 10 thousandths, it's tight. A 15 won't go and a 14 will go, so I'm gonna call it good with that. Alright, I got two size thicknesses that I was using. I got two thick ones and a thinner one. This one, the thinner ones are like 75 and the thicker ones are like 99, 100, which my multimeter ain't perfect. Just a little cheap one. But I'm gonna use two thick ones and a thin one, and I'm gonna put the thick one at the bottom, and I'm just soaking my frictions in fluid for about 15 minutes before I put them in there. But steel goes in first, so we can go ahead and put that in there. Then a clutch, then a steel, then a clutch, then a steel, then a clutch, for a total of 3 each. So steel goes at the bottom and a clutch friction goes at the top, and then this backing plate goes on. And then I bought a thicker snap ring to put on there. It helps to use the thicker back snap ring, and I used a 106 thousandths snap ring. So I'm gonna let those soak, and then we'll go ahead and put those in. Alright, so my clutches have soaked long enough. We already put one steel in. I put the thickest steels on the bottom. And then get all messy. Grab a clutch. Drop it straight in there. Another steel. Another clutch. Another steel. And then one more clutch. And that's it. And then this big piece goes on. And then this one only goes on one way. There's the big piece that goes in the void. So we'll throw that in there. There we go. All right, and then our thick snap ring that goes on. And I'm gonna put that on this way, because with the trans brake, we're not going to use the band for the direct drum, so that band's going to stay out. And then the thing that holds the band's a little plug that comes in through right there, that hole where the end of that snap ring is. So I already knocked that out for the case saver. We're going to use a case saver in this one. Alright, there we go. I'll put the snap ring in. Again, make sure it wants to seat all the way back. Then we put the case saver in. There's a big bolt, Allen bolt that goes through there. When you initially put that thing through there, you got to screw it through there, which is a pain in the butt. You put an Allen on there, and then you just screw it through there, and there ain't much room to get an Allen in there. And see, I got that opening right underneath the case saver, about in the middle, which is exactly where I wanted it. And then you put a nut on this end, and tighten it up. And then there's a bolt that goes through here, an Allen bolt that goes through there that holds it on this side. You're not going to use this anymore with the trans brake. And make sure we got that good and tight. And there you go, that's that. On to the next piece. Actually, before we move on to the next piece, we have to check the clearance. From what I gather from what somebody said, the book said, these are supposed to be 40 thousandths to 100 thousandths. A lot of people say if it's under, I did a lot of research, again, first time building one of these. I did a lot of research, and a lot of people say if you're under 50 thousandths, you'll have spin losses. And then a lot of people say 10 thousandths per clutch pack, which would mean that should be 30 because there's only 3 clutch packs in there. But mine's at 60, and based on all the information I've gathered, I'm just going to leave it there. But when you check these, you want to use a filler gauge and put it in between the top friction and your plate. You don't want to go from the plate to your snap ring, because this plate lays on a ledge, and it might not be all the way down on the friction. So you want to check from the friction to the bottom of this plate, top friction to the bottom of this plate. And I'm gonna go ahead and check it again just for giggles. I got these straight filler gauges, so what I do is I take them out of this. I got a 35, a 20, a 15, 2 10s, and a 5. And it just makes it a lot easier to get them in there. So we'll go ahead and check it. And there's how I put the filler gauges in there. You gotta be they're kind of hard to get in sometimes, because if you notice on the clutch, there's a lip between the teeth. So it's kind of better if you pull it out and then go into the area where that lip's exposed, so you can get up in between that lip and this plate. But here's what I fit in here. So I fit a 20, a 15, and 2 10s. So 55. It's actually right at 55. So that's good. I'm going to roll with that. Also, on all these, I'm not using the wavy plates. I'm using all flat plates. So here's my direct drum. I already rebuilt it. I used the aluminum piston on this one. I used the cast piston on the stock cast type piston on all the rest of them. The Ford and the center piece, they've just got the, I guess that's cast steel. I don't know. Yep, definitely not aluminum. See, this one in here for my direct drum, it's aluminum. And I wish I could have got aluminum for all of them, but I'm kind of doing this on a budget. But so I've already did this one. I've already did the lip seals and everything like that. Now the lip seals, this one with the trans brake, you're not going to use the seal that goes on the hub itself. Now the 2 seals on the piston, the inner and the outer, you're going to use those. And also on a trans brake, you're going to drill the hole. Now when you put that down in there on all these that have those lip seals, that one, and the center section down in there, you got to be real careful not to rip the lip seals and make sure the lip seals don't fold back on you. What a lot of people use is just a filler gauge. Put it in there, go around it, go around the inside, and then just keep working it. And it takes a while, and then you get it in there. But if the lip seals are in there good, these should spin. Now the aluminum piston, I put a bunch of grease down, trans grease in this one. That stuff acts like glue. So, but yeah, should be able to spin them. But I've already checked that one, and I've checked this one. So to check the intermediate, you just blow air right through the bolt hole, and it should work. Now, the direct drum, it just goes straight in next. And then once you get it in, and it just lays in there, you can blow through this hole and hold this hole, and then it should work. And I've already tested this one, but I'm at a standstill right now because I'm doing the trans brake, and I need the trans brake springs. The trans brake uses stouter springs. So that's where we're at on that. But I already put the clutches in, and I got 6 clutches in this one with this piston. I'll share the part numbers in the front of the video. But this piston I was able to get in the rebuild kit that I bought, mixing my steels with the rebuild steels, because there were 2 different thicknesses. I was able to get 6 clutches in here. But I'll have to take all the clutches out to put the springs back on. And I'm using this little compressor tool, and I probably showed you earlier in the video using that and changing some of these lip seals. But yeah, once I get this together, I'll take the clutches out of it. I got 50 thousandths on this with 6 clutches, so that's good. I've got 45 thousandths on the Ford. The Ford can be a little tighter. But once I'll take the clutches out, I'll put the springs in. I'll use my little spring compressor tool. And then I'll put that on, this on, and the snap ring. And then I'll put my clutches and steels back in, my plate, and then put the snap ring in. And then I can go ahead and drop it down in there. But I already dropped it down in there and tested to make sure that my lip seals and it was working, and that one was working. Now I don't know how to test that one. I took that one back apart because my new hub, I bought a new hub. This hub goes on this gear easy, no matter which way you put it. Now this hub from Sonex, or however you pronounce that, it will only go on one way. I actually marked it. I'll wipe my mark off. But anyway, look there, it went straight on. I was having a hard time getting that to go on before, and it seems like it only likes to go on one way. Look there, I got lucky. See? Well, it'll go on a few different ways now, but it'll only go on certain ways. So at first, I thought I had the wrong hub. See there? But anyway, I can go ahead and put that one back together. All I gotta do on this one, which I've already checked everything on that one. I've already checked the clearance and everything like that. And this one takes 5 clutches and steels. Let's get this transmission back. I'm gonna set this up here, and we'll go ahead and finish this one. So I already did the seals on this one, the lip seals, and I'll probably add a video earlier in here of me showing you that. But I already checked the clearances on them and everything like that. It's better to check the clearance without the springs and this on, and without the hub in it. But definitely without the hub in it, because you're not going to get in there with the hub on. But definitely want to check that with this piece, the retainer clip, this piece, and the springs out. It just makes it a lot easier to get your filler gauge in there. But then you got to take all the clutches and steels out with the tool I have anyway, to compress those back down. Put your springs in, compress that back down, put your snap ring on, and then put your steels and clutches in. And then on this hub, there are, I don't know if these are bronze or plastic, but you got one that goes on the bottom, and you got one that goes on the top. These little dental tools you can get from Harbor Freight, they help. Yeah, there you go. Alright, so that one goes there. And then you can put, I'm going to put a bunch of assembly grease on there too, because the assembly grease acts like glue and holds those bushings in place. But not so worried about this one, because we're going to go ahead and put it in. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and put a little assembly groove on there. Now when you put this on there, you got to get it to line up all these clutches. So there's 2. Just wiggle and turn. Wiggle and turn. 3. Sometimes it's easier to line these up with your little pick tool before you drop them down in there. Let's do that. Just make things easier. A little bit of assembly goo. Yeah, we'll use this pick. Alright, hope that ain't making you out too dizzy. See, look, we're down 3 of them. So you can get these to all line up. It just makes things a little bit easier. Alright. Make sure we got our bushing. And there we go. We're bottomed out. Now we can put this piece back on. Then we'll put our snap ring in. And then don't forget, on your hub, there's a plastic bushing on the top too. And we're going to put some assembly goo on that too. So it stays in there. We'll put that on there and put your snap ring on. And then when I get the direct drum done, it just drops down in there. You line up the splines. And then the forward just drops right down in there. And that's it. And then the pump goes on. But like I said, waiting on trans brake parts for that. So just to recap on this, for your trans brake, you're not using that second seal down. You're not using the band. You can put a case saver in there, it helps. You're not using the seal on the inside of the drum itself. There's a seal on the inside of the drum itself. We're not using that one. But we are using the 2 piston seals, the inner and the outer. Plus you got to drill a 1/16 hole down here, like right at the edge, the very bottom, on out. And I'll show you where I drilled that. Well, I might have had another video that I showed you that in. I'm kind of redoing the video because, yeah, there it is right there. I'm kind of redoing the videos because I didn't have nothing on the gear set. But I went ahead and took the gear set back apart and redid it all. So I thought I'd make another video. And then on the trans brake, you're not going to use this. And then I'll probably going to show this video here in a minute. There's 2 seals in here that you don't use. And then you do, the big part has a seal around it inside here. And then the one that goes inside the big part has 2 seals, and you're not going to use those. You're not going to use that. You are going to use your modulator valve, but, or whatever that's called. But there's going to be a plug right here. And then also, you're not going to use any of that. The regulator, or whatever it's called. And I'll show you it. We're not going to use this either. That's like the electric kick down. But that vacuum piece you're not going to use, and you're not going to use that regulator either. Not using that band. But yeah, I'll show you a few videos of them hooking this all back up and then putting that back in there.
Okay, so I'm just going to add some random videos in here of some other videos that I had, rebuilding the direct and the forward and the, I don't think I got any videos of rebuilding the center support, but it's pretty much the same as the direct and the forward. And the direct and the forward, they're identical. I mean, they use the same clutches, the same stills, and the pistons. You can put different pistons in them, but they use the same pistons too.
The piston does go all the way up on there, and then the Torrington bearing goes around it. That's pretty cool. So you knock this in flush with the case, and then it's got this ledge that the bearing and shims are going to sit on, because look at that, it fits right over top of it. Well, if the shims were stacked up nice and straight, it would. But yeah, there's the bearing that goes right over it. So yeah, we just need to figure out those thicknesses equal to these thicknesses. We'll just break out the multimeter on that. But I'm going to have to get the case cleaned. I'd like to get the case cleaned and the tabs cut off of it before, and I'm going to set it up here before we, well, I can go ahead and get the measurements done, but kind of at a standstill until I can get that case cleaned. But we could do this. We could drill a hole in this. This has to have a hole drilled in it. And then for the trans brake, you leave this seal off. And then on the piston, we'll leave the inner and outer seal on that. But this seal right here, we're going to leave out for the trans brake. And then for a trans brake, you got to drill a hole down here, a 1/8 inch hole. So we're going to do that. As well, also on the trans brake, the second little, there's 4 seals here. They're kind of hard to see. You take the second one out, which I've already done, which you can't really see because of the color of those. Let's see. And then there's none right here. But yeah, that's the main thing. You take that seal out, drill that hole, and then take the inner seal out of this part. So those are the main things that have to be done inside the transmission. Micrometer, my little cheap micrometer, it the batteries are dead. I don't have a battery for it, so that's going to have to wait. That's going to have to wait. It needs to wait anyway because I'm cleaning the transmission. I got it in the backyard soaking in oven cleaner, so I'm going to do a few rounds of that. I bought 3 cans of oven cleaner. And I'm spraying it on it, let it soak 30 minutes, spraying it off. Probably be better if I took it to the car wash where I had some high pressure, but we're going to do this. I bought this little tool. I forgot where I got it, but there's a few different websites that have it from 70 to 90 bucks. So I picked the cheapest one. And it got here pretty quick, and look at there. It pushed that down easy. Look at that spring's going crooked. So we're going to take that snap ring off and loosen the pressure up on that. See if we can one-hand this jewel. I doubt we can. But you never know. Look there. Come out on one side anyway. Yeah, I might have to two-hand this. I got the snap ring up. I don't have the best snap ring pliers in the world. And then we just loosen this nut. That'll come off and come off. I'm trying not to screw it and hold this from spinning. There we go. And then the springs go flying across the room. Yeah, sometimes the lip of this, I try to get stuck in the lip that was in. You can just wiggle it out of that. And we just release the pressure. And this one doesn't have the aluminum piston in it like I was hoping it did. Oh well, another part to order. Alright, there we go. So, Another thing on that is, from what I understand, the trans brake, which I haven't ordered yet, should come with stronger springs. I'm gonna have to have two hands to take this off. And there we go. The piston and pulled right out. Seeing this one's got an inner seal and an outer seal. And then on a trans brake, you don't use this seal, which I'm not using this at all. I was just wanting to see if that was the aluminum piston. So that's the piston. We're going to change the seals on that. And then we're going to leave that seal off. You know, the one that was right there, that black thing. But we'll change the seals on this. But I'm thinking about ordering one of those aluminum pistons. I'm not sure what that's made out of. It's probably made out of aluminum, but they got them aluminum ones that's got the holes where the springs sit. I don't know if I need that top for the trans brake or not. So at another standstill, I'll probably have to order one of those. I'm gonna ask that question on the Turbo 400 Racing page there on Facebook and see what answers I get. Alright, so here's the piston I bought, which works better. The aluminum piston. I guess these came in the older transmissions, but yeah, they hold the spring a lot better. Plus, all this is apply surface, whereas on this one, this was all the apply surface, because this goes on top of the other piston like this and pushes up. So that's, you know, that little thin piece compared to all this. So I bought this one. And I went ahead and put the outer seal on. And there's a flat edge that goes down inside this groove. There's a groove there. There's a groove there. And then there's a piece that goes downward on the outside like a skirt. And you want to make sure that it's facing down, the way my finger's pointing. And there should be another one in here. So let me find that one and put that one on the inside the same way. Alright, we got both the lip seals in. Again, make sure they're pointing down. And before I put this on, I'm going to leave it up real good. Now this is our new direct drum, and it's got to have a hole drilled in it. I guess you're supposed to drill a 1/16 inch hole from here to the outside underneath where the lip seal is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next, and then we can go ahead and start putting some of this together anyway. Alright, so there's my 1/16 inch bleed hole they say you're supposed to have for the trans brake, and it came out right there. So it works for me. I'll take it. I tried to start right there, but the drill bit walked. That shouldn't bother anything. That's the sealing surfaces on the side. But yeah. Now we can grease that up real good. Clean this out first. Like there's shavings right there. Don't want that down there. Clean that out real good, and then we can lube that up. Remember, with the trans brake, we're not going to use this one. See, it's on that one. We're not using that one. We're not using that band. We're not using none of that. And then we can go ahead and put our clutches in and check our clearance. And then we'll have to wait on putting the top and the snap ring in until we can get the correct springs. But we can also go ahead and put the 34 element sprag on there. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and switch this over and put the sprag on. Now I'm going to reuse this and the clip. Now this should turn clockwise. It should lock counterclockwise. See, just like that. But put the 34 element sprag, you got to have a drum with a smooth surface like that. And I'll show you what this one looks like. I believe this one had a 6 element in it. All right, I took the snap ring off just like that. And this piece comes right off. And this piece slides right off. And this slides off too, but I'm going to leave that on there. See, well, no, I'm going to take it off. See how that one ain't moved? Smooth. That one has had an 8 element sprag on it. But we'll leave that on there. And set that over there. Because we don't need that no more. We don't need the band no more. We are going to need this piece and the snap. We're going to need this piece and the snap ring once we get our heavy duty springs from our trans brake. Why? Sometimes I just lose the words. All right, let me open this up and we'll put this on. Now on the notched ones like that, those sprags are dang near impossible to put upside down. This one right here, it is possible to put it upside down. And that side goes down, the side with the grooves in it. I can remember because see the lip there? That little lip, that's where this was sitting. So, that's how I remember that. But anyway, this goes on there. Apparently if you just spin and twist and look, I already know I got it upside down just by trying to put it on. I got that wedged on there kind of, so let me take 2 hands to get it off. All right, I flipped it over and let's try to put it on again. Probably gonna need 2 hands for this too. Yeah, I am. Well, there's a top and a bottom piece. This piece was left inside the box. I'm glad I saw that. But I tell you what, man, that thing, maybe that'll make it easier to go on. That is not easy to get on. I'm gonna cuss if it's backwards. It's upside down. All right. I got some transmission assembly goo from where I rebuilt my 4L60E. That after 2 years of serious abuse, it finally lost the 3/4 clutch pack. It's sitting over there behind that white garbage can. But anyway, not important. So, with this outer race took off and spinning that without this on there, I was able to see which way it goes. You could tell just by turning it which way it's going to try to lock. So, I like to never got this on here. So I thought, well, the little rollers are keeping me from pushing it down. I tried to push the rollers in as I went around, and this would cock back and forth, and the other ones would pop out. So what I did was I took that assembly goo, and I stuck it up in them needle bearings real good, and went this way, and pushed them all in. And that thing plopped right back. That just plopped right on there. Didn't even have to do anything. It just went straight on after that. So there you go. All right. So this has ears on it. And that has ears on it. So you line up the ears and boom, down it goes. Then you just put your snap ring back on. I would think that you don't want the opening in one of them grooves. Not sure if it matters or not, but I'm just going to spiral this on there. Actually, you know what? I'm not putting that on there either. Because saying spiral made me remember that I bought a spiral lock for that off of eBay. So we're waiting on that. Hopefully that won't just fall off. Actually, that goo's created a suction on that. Yeah. Tell you what, that goo's like glue. creates a suction and just holds stuff in place. It's really helpful for bearings, especially on the gear set down there. You got a bunch of bearings in there, especially when you put your center section in. That bearing's like 3 different pieces. So the top part, if you leave it down in the transmission, you might have a hard time getting it to line up with the bottom of the center section. So I use the goo on that part because it only goes in one way. The lip side has to go up inside the center section. So I assembly gooed that in there. Assembly glue. Kind of works like a glue. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to blow this out, and then we can go ahead and grease this up real good. Grease this up real good with the assembly goo. And I'm going to use a filler gauge, which I took my filler gauge apart. I'll just use like a 10 thousandths and just kind of until that drops down in there, because we can go ahead and put that in there, but I'm going to blow it out first. I got my little baby air compressor already. It's all full. It's just ready to blow it out, because some of the metal shavings are down in there and I can't wipe them out. Alright. I assembly gooed her up real good. Probably a little overkill. But I don't know, the way that stuff worked on putting that sprag in there. Alright, so I'll set that down in there. Wiggle it around. See if we can't get her to fall in place. And then I'm going to take a filler gauge, a number 10. Got a number 10 in here somewhere. I got 2 10s for some reason. This one's a different color than the rest of them. That'll work for me. Clean it off real good. I'm just going to go around. I'm going to go down in here too. And I'm going to put that on. This takes a little while. I did the, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm pretty sure there's one in there too, the Ford. The center section had one in it. And I did that one already. That took me a little while, but take your time, patience. They make better tools for this. They make this round little plastic disc thing, which I guess you could make yourself if you had some real thin plastic, and you just stick it in there and it's round and you roll it. I guess you can make one yourself, and they make this little wire thing too. But you can do this as well. Just be real careful when you do this not to tear your seal, cut your seal, rip your seal. But I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Alright, there we go. It's in. And it spins. In hindsight, it raises up and down easy, but it don't spin that good because of that goo's causing a vacuum or something. In hindsight, I kind of wished I would have used transmission fluid for lubrication, because you're supposed to be able to spin that, which it does spin fairly easy, and it does come up and down pretty easy. I'm afraid to try to pull it up with one hand because I don't want to pull it all the way out there. But yeah, I just use that filler gauge. And again, probably the goo isn't the best for doing that. I'd say just a good coating of transmission fluid. I don't know. That blue assembly glue, I guess there's red and there's green too, but I don't know. That stuff, it's cold outside. It's like 40s, high 40s. And that stuff gets really thick when it's this cold. But let's put the clutches and the stills on it and see what the clearance is. Okay, so as I showed before, that was my stock piston setup. Only this part pushes on the bottom steel. So I went to this one. Like I said, it's got more area to push on the bottom steel. But apparently this piston's a lot lower than what that setup is. So I put 5 stills and clutches in there, and there was a huge gap. So I put 6 steels and clutches. I found out that my kit had thinner steels than mine came with. So I only had 5 of the thinner ones. That's all it came with. I don't know. There was 2 different sizes. I'm not sure why. There were 10 steels and 10 clutches for the Ford and the direct, but 5 of them were a different size. Now, my battery went dead in my micrometer, and I'm having a hard time finding a battery to fit it. But I could at least use the micrometer to tell some were thicker than the others. So I put, since I only had 5 of the thin ones, I put 5 thin ones in here and 1 thick one. And that put me right at 50 thousandths. 55 wouldn't go, but 50 would go. Which is about right, I guess. I hear it's 10 per clutch, so it should be 60, I guess. But I think 50 would be fine, and we'll go with it. And since I only got 10 clutches with my rebuild kit, that's what I'm going to have to go with. I probably could buy, I don't know what sizes these steels come in, but obviously there's 2 different sizes I got. And I put the thicker one on the top. So maybe I'll order a thinner one and put it in there and give me a little bit more room for that, because I'd like it to be around 60. But we're done with that until we can get the transbake ordered for the springs. And then I ordered the spiral lock for the sprag off of eBay, so I'm waiting for that to come in. I guess we'll deal with that, the Ford hub. Oh yeah, so in hindsight, I should have just, instead of ordering a kit, because that kit, it came with a band and a modulator, and I'm not going to use those. Came with a lot of bushings I wasn't going to use, so a lot of the bushings were still good. No sense changing out bushings when the ones that are in it are good. And the bushings very rarely go bad. The best thing I should have done was ordered separate kits. I should have got clutches. I didn't really need steels, unless maybe for this, where I put that new piston in there, I probably would have needed some smaller steels to get the 6 clutches in there, which I'm probably going to have to order one more of the thinner steels for that to get me a little bit more clearance there. I should have ordered the seals separate, a gasket set separate, or a gasket seal set together, and then I should have just ordered clutches separate and used my steels. Which on this, I probably would have wound up ordering steels and clutches for this, but that probably would have been the best route to take. But yeah, like I said, that's done for now. Until we get the other parts. Mess with that a little bit. Okay, so on this Ford drum, you just have this piece. Stick it out here, and a snap ring holds it on. Pop the snap ring off with a screwdriver, and then the hub comes out. Ta-da! And we got a replacement hub for that. But don't forget your washer there. I'm just going to leave that on there for now, hopefully. Don't forget it when I put it back together. And then, there you go. You just take your clutches and steels out. Easier, I found, just to flip it over. And this one, 5 clutches and steels, and there's the wavy plate on the bottom. I'm not running the wavy plates, just because most people I've seen on YouTube, we're not running them. So actually, I'm going to check the thicknesses on those, because these steels and clutches are the same size as over here. So if there's a thin one of these is thin, and then I can just use it over there, because none of this has changed. So hopefully, which, yeah, see, that's just the same deal. but I'm not going to get the aluminum piston for that one. I just wanted the aluminum piston for this one because there's high pressure springs that go in here for the trans brake. So I figured it was best to go with this type of piston rather than this one, because I'll be honest with you, when I pushed that down, the springs were actually buckling inside that. Pretty easy. They won't buckle like that on this. So, but yeah, on this one, you got the shaft sticking out. So I'm going to set it over. I'm going to push the transmission back some, set it right there so I can work on that. But yeah, it's pretty much the same thing. Press that down, take the snap ring off, pull your piston out, change the seals, put it back on there carefully with a little filler gauge for your lip seals. Lip seals are over there. And then put it all back together with new clutches. See, so oddly, all of these were thinner except for the top one and the bottom wave. The top one was thicker and the bottom wave was thinner. See, I just use my micrometer on the thinner ones and then match it up to the thicker ones, and you can tell which one's thinner and which one's thicker. Again, I don't know what size these come in, but it looks like I have two different sizes here. Even inside the transmission, I just took that forward drum apart, and it had, well, the wave was thin, the top one was thick, and then I had the three in the middle that were thin. So I'm going to see how this turns out. Maybe I can use one of the thinner ones over here on that top thick one I had to put in because I didn't have enough thin ones. And maybe this will all work out. And I'll just need one more direct forward clutch. Yeah, hopefully it'll work out that way. But we'll see. And there we go. Squeeze our tool together. Get in the grooves. Line these up right on the edge of this the best you can. Tighten these up and tighten this nut up. And it goes down. Make sure your snap ring is in an opening here. Take your snap ring off. Loosen that up. Push the sides back in. Take it out. Easy peasy. Okay, that time when I was loosening the tool off, it popped out on me and the springs went everywhere. I found them all except for two. No idea where those other two went. I highly doubt they went up in here anywhere. They would suck if they did. I don't see them nowhere. But looking at those, they look to be the same length, so I'll just use a couple of those. If I can't find them, I'm going to look for them a little bit more. But anyway, this part of the piston just comes right out. That's the part that pushes on your bottom steel. And then this slides right out. And this one, we are going to keep that seal in there. We're going to replace it. And we're going to replace these two seals. And then we're going to put it back together. Alright, there we go. And as expected, that one was a little harder. But moves up and down good. Spins good. Spins a lot easier than this one, but that one's got a lot more stuff on the bottom, plus I put all that goo in there. I think that's the only reason for that. But, yeah. Alright. Alright, I ordered the 4L80E type spiral lock ring for a sprag. I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. Put it in the groove. See if we can get it to spin down. Oh yeah, easy peasy. Whoop whoop. Turns clockwise, doesn't turn counterclockwise. And there we go. It's in nice and good. Now, I got a 50 thousandths clearance on this with the 6 clutch backs. Reading online, you can have 008 to 010 clearance per clutch back. So 6 clutches times 8, that's 48, so 50. So I should have 0.048 to 60, that's at 50. And we're going to roll with that. Now, once we get the trans brake, once we get the trans brake, we can go ahead and we're going to take all this back out and then put the springs back on. Now on this one right here, I'm told that you can run the Ford tighter, 05 per clutch back, which would be 25, which is exactly where I'm at on that. But I don't know, that seems a little tight to me because a lot of people are running them a little thicker. Apparently the Ford uses the thinner stills and the Direct uses the thicker stills, but I'm having to mix and match them to get what I want. But plus I wound up, that piston needed 6 clutches, or 6 fit in there with the stills I had. But the rebuild kit I had only came with 10 clutches. The Ford and the Direct use the same clutches. The intermediate uses different clutches, which it's already in. And these are a little loose. I mean, I'm at 60 on these. I don't know if that's good or not. I've heard some people go as high as 80 on these, and some go as low as, 50. I'm probably just going to leave it there. 60 there. 60 thousandths clearance there. 50 thousandths clearance there. And I'm at 25 thousandths here. And I did order some thinner steels. See if we can't get this a little bit different, because I did have to put the thin wavy paint on the bottom, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know, but we'll keep fooling with that. You can actually double stack steels to get where you want to be, but I need less here, so that ain't gonna help me. But yeah, I got some thinner steels coming. I'm gonna try to mess with that a little bit more. Try to get the clearance we need, and I'm gonna keep the intermediate and the Direct drum where we're at. Okay, it's a few days later. Not sure where I left off at, but I ordered some thinner steels to open this up a little bit. The Ford drum, from what I understand, it can be a little tighter, but I was shooting for around 50 thousandths, and I got 45 thousandths now with the thinner steels I bought. So I'm soaking the frictions, clutches, whatever you want to call them, in transmission fluid for 15 minutes, and I'm going to go ahead and do final assembly on this. So the springs have got to go in first. So that's what I'm doing now. Just going to put all these springs on here. I don't think there was a spring on every single one of them. I mean, the springs kind of jumped out when I took this part off. But I look, and these springs are pretty big. I mean, I'd see them pretty good down there on the ground. I look, and couldn't find any. I'm thinking it kind of went like that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm gonna go ahead. The trans brake, it comes with springs. So when I buy the trans brake, so I'm just going to take some of these from the direct drum and put in here. So I've got all those on, and then the cap goes on like so. There's a C-clip there. So I gotta make sure all these springs are in the groove, and then I'll get that tool and press that down and put the clip on. I might have two hands for that. Alright, so there we go. We'll put this tool in here like this right here. These go down on the lips. Usually use both hands to squeeze it through. And then you get your little prongs there straight on there. And twist that nut and tighten it down. I tightened it down a little bit, and then I went around and made sure my springs were as straight as I could get them. And then I pressed it all the way down and put my C-clip in. Make sure it goes all the way in. See them little ledges? It should be on the inside of those little lip things right there. And once I got it in and took the tool off, I took a screwdriver and kind of pried in here and made sure they were all the way in. But yeah, that looks good. Now in the process, I knocked this piece out. So I gotta get that to clip back in place. And then we can put the stills and the clutches back in. Alright. So, I guess this is the stamped steel clutch. I guess the aluminum, or stamped steel piston. I guess the preferred ones are the aluminum, and I did put aluminum in the direct, but it's probably a good idea to put aluminum in all these. Because on the aluminum, there's way more contact area on the steel than just that little flimsy ledge. And it's all built in together. This ain't built in together. It'll pop out. But, yeah. So it goes steel. Nope. Get the camera off here. There's 5 steels and 5 clutches I'm using in this one. There's the steel. And then I soak those for 15 minutes. Clutch. Steel. Clutch. Steel. And those, they're different, but you can drop them any old way. I guess you're supposed to alternate which side that's on. Clutch. And a steel. And these can go either way. There is no upside down. Then a clutch. Then a steel. And then a clutch. And this is why you want to measure your clutch back clearance before you put everything together, because once you put all this stuff in here, you can't. And this is the hub, and this is, I bought an aftermarket hub. This is going to go down in the clutches, and it's a little tricky getting them in. There's one clutch, 2, 3, 4. I might have to have 2 hands. Get that all the way down in there. Alright, so that's what it looks like when it's all the way down in there. And then, this right here goes on. And then your snap ring goes on. And that's it. Once I get that snap ring, the forward drum is done. You just, takes 2 hands to put these on. But I'll go ahead and put that on. And voila. Forward drum is done. Yeah, snap rings in. I got about 45 thousandths clearance. And we're going to call that good. Also, you got that bushing there. Put some transmission assembly goo or grease or Vaseline or whatever on that. Make sure it stays there. Because when you're dropping that down in the transmission, you're going to be dropping that down in bottom side first. And we need that to stay where it's at. And the assembly goo, Vaseline, petroleum jelly, whatever you want to call it, is to help hold that in place. Okay, so on the servo, whatever, this seal stays on, but these two right here, that one and that one, where my thumb is, that one and that one come off. Then you got the big spring that goes down there, that goes there, and then this big round spring goes right there. And then I can put all that back together, but I'm going to clean this up first. Alright, so I just stuck it all back up in the hole just so I had it back on. Now you see that little hole right there? You got the place in the gasket and the place in the cover. And that's going to go back on just like that. And that's going to cover that hole. Just like that. And just so you can see it. See, with just the gasket. That covers that hole. Just like that. And you can see the hole is shaped just like that is. So, see, it's got that little angle right there. And then the gasket has that same angle. So it goes just like that. But I'm going to need 2 hands to put that on. But something else I forgot on my hub. There's one of those washer bushings right there. See, and I forgot to put that in. So make sure you double check and check, because when all this stuff goes together, there's usually a bushing or a bearing on the top and the bottom. I remembered the one on the top. We put that one on. See, I forgot the one on the bottom, but that's not going to be a big deal. I just take that snap ring out, pull this out, pull the hub out, put it on, and put it all back together. The clutches, frictions are going to be lined up already. So, but yeah, this piece here only uses this metal gasket. All right, I put that thrust bushing on the bottom. I put it back down in there. This time I put some assembly goo on the thrust bearing and put it in, then took it out to make sure that the inside there was hitting on the thrust bearing, and it is. Make sure that was all the way down. So it's all the way down. I got that on. I'm going to put this back on. Put the snap ring back on. And then I'm going to change this little seal inside here. And I'm going to go ahead and put the shifter piece back in. Alright, that's what that seal looks like. Here's the old one. Here's the new one. So I'm going to lube this up with some assembly goo, stick it back in the hole. Alright, I just took a 13mm socket and tapped it up in there with a extension and a hammer. It looks to be seated all the way. Yeah. Now I'm going to put all this together. Parking pawl going to have to be over there. Alright. I got all that in. It kind of wasn't easy because you had to put this through, then this, and then the nut. And then this binds up against the side of this if you don't have it far enough. So it was a little bit tricky to hold this, get this. Then you got to make sure that goes all the way up on that where it's supposed to go. There's grooves in this that this groove lips on this that this slides up on. But once you got all that in, I couldn't push it all the way into here for some reason. I put a nut on the end of that and just kind of, I left the nut past the bolt a little and tapped it on. That way I didn't fray up the bolt. And then I went ahead and tightened the bolt down a little bit because I think my shift kit's going to come with a different linkage. So I'm just going to leave it on there. And then there's a groove right here in the shaft that you line up this nail with. And then I just knock the nail in there and it holds it all in there. It ain't going nowhere, that's for sure. And then I put my parking pawl down, and then you want to put this piece up inside here and then bolt this down. And then don't forget to put your spring on. It's probably better to put the spring on first and then put this and set it on the parking pawl, and then just put this on and bolt it down. Make sure that spring don't fly up in there. There's a groove on the parking pawl down at the very bottom that goes into. You can't really see it on the picture, but yeah, there's like a little moon shape right there that spring goes into. I don't know if it went the other way or that, but it works that way. And that, I don't know if that lips, I don't know if the spring's supposed to be the other way or this way, but I figured it'd work better this way because that way the end of the spring won't hit on nothing. There's more support on this side if it does hit on something, but it just loops right there. And then when you put it in park, that pushes down in there, pushes on the parking pawl, and then the parking pawl grabs those teeth down in there, and then you shouldn't be able to spin it, see? Then you take it out of park, and it should spin good. As it does, see? Just like that. And then it just slides up in there. Sometimes it don't go all the way up in there, but because it's on one of the teeth right now. But you got to think once you get that tensioner piece on there, and you put it in park, and it's in that park groove, it's going to stay. And then when the car rolls a little bit, then it'll plop on in place. See if I could hold that and turn the output shaft at the same time. You'd see what I was talking about. See right there? I doubt it, but anyway, boom, just like that. I just turned it, put it in park, and held it like the little parking piece, the little, I don't know nomenclature on these things, but that little thing that plops in these things that gets bolted right here, it goes click, 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 click. Yeah, that'll hold it up in park, and then when the car barely rolls and it goes click, click, and it'll go into park and lock the transmission so it don't roll. But anyway, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the governor cover on upside down, because nothing is going to go in there with the trans brake, nothing at all. It's a manual shift, so that governor thing spins. I'm not sure how it works, but it spins and helps it tells the transmission when to shift. Also the modulator, if you got one of those vacuum adjusted modulators, it tells it when to shift, but we're not going to be using any of that. So I'm just going to put the cap on there and the gasket I'm going to flip the cap upside down because when you do that, that tells someone it's got a manual valve body and or trans brake. Alright. That's not in there. I flipped it upside down. The piece that normally goes in there is that right there. And then I'm going to be tying the speedometer into the front wheel speed sensor, but had to go ahead and put that on. I changed the seals on the inside and on the outside. Lubed it up good. Pushed it in there and bolted that on. And I went ahead and put this piece on, though. I already have one. Well, no, I don't. That's the plug. You're still going to use, for a trans brake, you're still going to use the valve, but there's a plug in there that don't let it move. So it has to come with a trans brake. And this is going to be the electrical connector for the trans brake, which is that piece right there, which I guess is like the electric kick down or something. I don't know. It's that blue piece. And that one's good, and I can use it, but might as well use the brand new one. But you don't use that vacuum piece, you don't use that piece, you don't use the trans brake or that piece there, and you don't use that band right there when you're doing a trans brake. So we got all that out of there. And I went ahead and tested the intermediates with a hose right here. You put a hose right there, and I just used that little fitting right there, and I only got it up to like 40. It didn't take much. I think even when it was at 20 pounds, it was activating it. But that was activating it for sure. And then you can check the direct once you get it on, but I need the springs for it. You can check it blowing through this hole and plugging this hole, I believe it is. And that should work the direct. And how to check this one, I don't know. Might have to figure that out. Maybe it's one of these holes. But I'm going to check that out and make sure the piston's working. Because if the piston ain't working, you're going to have problems. But it's good to check all that. But yeah, I'm going to have to, which I wonder if I could still check that without this stuff on there. Because, I mean, it's just going to push this part forward. I mean, we don't have the springs on there, but we really don't need to have the springs to test that. Let's check it. Let's stick it down in there. Alright, I stuck it down in there. Then I applied air to this hole and put my finger over this hole with one of them little air chuck things with the rubber end. And it works. It ain't easy getting that down in there, though. I'll tell you what. That's kind of heavy. And there's no room to grab a hold of it on the outside, so you got to put your fingers on the inside, which is going to be even more fun with the springs in it.
Okay, so this video went way longer than I expected. And I think I went over a couple of things twice. But yeah, that's where I'm at. So now I just need a trans brake. I need to buy the trans brake, and I'll finish putting the rest of it together.